on today's StoryBeat.
Just support your fellow artists and your fellow writers and be supportive of your team. Thank your editor, show your appreciation. They are working so hard, and it may not be the same position as you have. It may not be the same thing as writing, but having others who understand your love for writing or books or anything, it's so important. Writers are so inherently lonely. So it's great to make friends that can relate to you in those plights.
This is StoryBeat with Steve Cuden, a podcast for the creative mind. StoryBeat explores how masters of creativity develop and produce brilliant works that people everywhere love and admire. So join us as we discover how talented creators find success in the worlds of imagination and entertainment. Here now is your host, Steve Cuden.
Thanks for joining us on StoryBeat. We're coming to you from the Steel City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My guest today, Paige N. Regan, is a dark fantasy author known for her great ability to infuse humor into the macabre. With a focus on young adult and adult novels, her captivating stories transport readers into worlds teeming with magic, myth, and murder. Her most recently published works include Sin and Bones and Blood and Stone, which are the first two books of the Sin and Bones trilogy. Paige's upcoming Gothic Fantasy novel, We Are Buried in the Garden, is set to be released in September 2026. I've read Sin and Bones and can tell you it's an exciting, otherworldly tale about a teenage girl dealing with all the difficulties involved in growing up while facing supernatural forces and influences that create unusual challenges for her to overcome. For the record, Paige and I met while she was a student at Point Park University, and I was one of her screenwriting professors. Paige has the distinction of being the very first of my former students to appear as a guest on StoryBeat, and I couldn't be more proud or pleased. Truthfully, for me, this is a milestone moment. So for all those reasons and many more, I'm thrilled to welcome to StoryBeat today someone I actually taught, the exceptionally gifted writer, Paige N. Regan. Paige, great to see you again, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. It's so exciting to see you. So excited to be here.
Indeed. It is. It's exciting. So it's very cool that you're my first student to appear on the show. I'm just curious. I'm assuming since you're now a published author that I didn't totally ruin you as a writer.
No, you actually helped a lot. You gave me the structure I needed to actually finish my projects, which is awesome.
I focused on that, trying to get students to understand that being a perfect author is not the goal, at least not in the beginning of a writing career. The goal should be getting it finished.
Yes, oh my gosh, that's been so important. I'm not sure I would have finished most of my projects if not for a lot of your classes. So thank you.
Well, that's cool. Well, you're welcome. I'm glad it sunk in a little bit. That's for sure. In fact, when I read your work, it sunk in a lot. So how old were you? Let's go back a little bit. When you started to think about, for the first time, words and writing and books, how old were you?
Oh my gosh. So I was probably 3, honestly. My grandmas taught me how to read and write from a very young age. They were very story focused. We used to do a lot of improv together when I was growing up. So they kind of instilled the love of stories. And then as I got older and just kept writing them, I finally realized, I can do this for a career. This is kind of what I want to do.
Well, that's it. And it's not the easiest road in the world, but if you get there, you really, really can get there. So I want to go back half a step. You did improv with your grandmas?
Yeah, we did a lot of random improv, a lot of imaginative play. It was very silly. I used to actually write little plays moments before I'd perform them for them in the nursing homes and everything.
This was in nursing homes?
One of them, yes. One of my grandmas, yeah, it was in a nursing home.
Were other people watching you? Were you performing for them?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes the neighbors would come down and they would just be happening to walk by. I'd be in the lobby doing this.
Wow. Well, so you were performing as a little kid then already.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, stories were everything for me growing up.
And were you a big reader when you were a kid?
Yes, I loved reading. There were a couple of periods where I dropped off of reading for a while, but I have been reading for a very long time.
Who influenced you when you were a kid? Who did you read? Who did you like to read?
Definitely Lemony Snicket was like my first big chapter books, the series of unfortunate events. Those were the big ones. I loved the Magic Tree House. And then as I got older, I got into, like Twilight, Hunger Games, things like that.
Well, that's the influence on your work. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say during middle school, I had like a weird classics period where I read everything Mark Twain wrote. I read Alice in Wonderland. I read like anything that was in the public domain. I searched it up and read it.
Wow. And you were doing this way before college, yes?
Oh yeah, this was in middle school. I went through a weird classics phase.
And so you came to Point Park as a screenwriting major. When did you start to get into movies and TV and the thought of working in that world?
That was probably closer to middle school, high school. I've always loved movies. Movies have been like a big thing for me growing up. I remember I had a Barbie camcorder one Christmas and I would film.
A Barbie camcorder?
Mm-hmm. It was super pink, super flashy. I used to wear like all my glitter costumes and do whatever for it. So I've always had like a huge soft spot for film and TV, and that kind of expanded.
Did you notice as you were watching movies that the books you had read as a kid were influencing stories that you were watching on film and TV?
No, not when I was younger.
Did not know.
Did not click.
But I assume it clicks for you now.
Yes, much more now.
There's a lot of crossover between what happened in the world of fantasy and science fiction and all that sort of type of genre work that people did well before there were movies that eventually influenced the movies and TV that then influenced you to write the kind of work that you do.
Absolutely. Actually, this past fall, I went through this fun little game, I guess, where I read a bunch of classic books again, and then I'd watch the movies afterwards and kind of see where the influences came in and where they fell off. I still am very upset about all the Dracula adaptations. Mina Harker, my beloved, she can't catch a break.
Did you train as a writer anywhere aside from Point Park? Did you take classes anywhere?
No, just a couple of creative writing classes in high school.
So the training that we gave you there then has stuck with you. It's held you in good stead.
Yes, absolutely. I still have all of the books, like the textbooks I had from college, still sitting on my writing shelf to reference back to when I need to.
Well, that's good. And it's interesting, isn't it, that you do occasionally need to refer to things because there's so many moving pieces and parts to a story, especially a long form story like what you write, that you can't always keep it all in your head at once, can you?
Oh, no, absolutely not. The amount of documents I have that are organized for different possibilities of endings is staggering. Yeah, there's a lot of organization involved. And I do have to reference back, especially when I get stuck on a scene or I'm struggling with a character. Currently, the manuscript I'm working on right now, I had trouble for about a month and a half just trying to figure out the main character and the pacing I wanted to have for it. So I referred back to a couple of my writing reference books, and that kind of kicked me back in gear.
What did you do in that case to figure out how that character worked?
So I sat down and I just went with the basics. Like I wrote, okay, what's her motivation? Who is she? What's her interests? I just went all the way back with her story, and I found out there were gaps that I just hadn't filled earlier on. And I was like, all right, well, we got to fix this.
That's what I'm talking about. There are things that there's so much to think about that you sometimes overlook a corner or an angle or some way to think about a character. That's what you're talking about, I assume, yeah?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so once you then figured it out, you have those epiphany moments where you go, aha, now I know what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
Was there some point in this whole process from whatever age onward that you finally thought to yourself, you know what, I am a pretty good writer and I really think I can be published?
I'm still getting there. I'm working on multiple manuscripts right now and outlines for another couple of series, but I'm not sure I'll ever get past the imposter syndrome entirely.
Well, I want to encourage you to take a number and get in line, because that's going to be true for the rest of your life. That's how it works for most writers that I know, is that we act like we know what we're doing, but in fact, we're always thinking they're going to catch me, that they are going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, yeah.
That's still true for me, and I've been at this for a long time. So don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. Just do the best work you can and keep going. That would be my encouragement to you. Do you now think of yourself primarily as a novelist?
Yes, I see myself definitely as more of an author than I have a screenwriter. I still write scripts once in a while, usually for video game clients, but I do see myself more as an author at this point.
Do you think about your books as something that can be translated and turned into screenplays?
Oh yeah. I use a lot of the tricks I learned in college to like get the outline and everything done. And I'm like, okay, well, I think it could be put into a movie.
100%. Well, we're going to talk much more about your books in a moment, or at least Sin and Bones. But there's no doubt in my mind from reading what you've written that they're cinematic in nature. They're already lend themselves to being translated and adapted. So don't think they're not. They really are. They're right in that pocket where it could be turned into a series or into a feature.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're quite welcome. All right. So you focus, obviously, and we'll talk about this again in a moment, on magic, myth, and murder. That's a lot of what you do in your books. And then you somehow manage, and I'm not sure how you do it, to make the macabre kind of lighthearted and entertaining while it can be kind of heavy at times. How did you become interested in blending humor or light aspects of it into what is a typically dark and troubling topic or topics?
I have always found humor to be a great way to cope with very traumatic and dark topics to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my own experience. But I think that
So what were your influences to get you to be lighthearted about darkness?
I have this kind of mindset that you just kind of need to laugh at things once in a while. Like, life is going to throw shit at you all the time. And yeah, a little bit of gallows humor. Some of it's just like, it is what it is. Things are going to keep happening. So,
well, things are going to keep happening, and life has a way of rearranging things for you, whether you want it or not. When things come and they're not right, it's great to continue to have a sense of humor about it, even when it's really awful. I think that's what's great about what I read in this book, is that you're not treating it so heavily that it's unpalatable to get through. And it shows that these characters, or in your protagonist in particular, that she is able to survive what for many people would be, a truly devastating time. Let's talk about Sin and Bones. Tell the listeners, pitch it to us. What's the story of Sin and Bones? What's it about?
So Sin and Bones is about a teenage girl who went through a very traumatic incident. And so she decides to make a kind of shady bargain with the Fae to hunt down the men who hurt her.
Well, what are the Fae?
So the Fae are like fairies. They are these high mythical beings. They're pretty inspired by Celtic Fae and mythology, but I kind of put my own little twist on it. I did a lot of research into different mythologies of the Fae, the unseelie, the kind of dark, miserable ones. I've noticed a lot of Fae stories, which there's no problem with this, but a lot of them are just kind of like pretty elves doing their thing. And I was like, okay, I want to make it a little grimmer, a little darker, closer to the origin.
What is there a particular book about the Faes that you read that you can refer people to?
I didn't read a particular book. I actually went online and found a bunch of Britannica. I believe they had a bunch of articles and like different journals about it. So I'd go through and read through those. And that was a pretty good resource.
So where did the idea come from for this story? How were you inspired to get here?
Funny enough, this actually used to be a screenplay I wrote in your class.
And you know what? Now that I think back, because this is a decade ago, right? So now that I think back, I remember you were doing something that had the Fae in it.
Yeah, it was during the Me Too movement I started it. A lot of stories I had read covering Eve's trauma dealt a lot with the depressive aspects, but not so much the kind of anger that I was looking for. And so I put that together, and I've always been interested in the Fae. I always thought they were really neat and fun. So I decided to put it together.
You've given them depth that what I think is not typically there when you think of the Fae. You've given them, kind of a 3 dimension that's wasn't there before.
Yeah, no, the Fae were very much, they're like tricksters, and some of them had like a little bit more personality, but a lot of them were just kind of, oh, this will scare your child. And I kind of modeled them more. I gave them a bit more emotion.
Well, for sure. And they're kind of like the dark version of Tinkerbell.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Would you categorize this book as YA? What category is this in?
I do upper YA, so like 16 and up.
16 and up.
Yeah, I don't try to recommend it to anyone younger than that just because of the sensitive topics, even if I don't write out those topics.
And are you thinking about that audience as you're writing?
Yes.
You're purposefully writing it to target that particular group.
I definitely keep it in mind. In the first draft, it's just all for me. But after that, when I go through the revisions and rewrites, I do think about, okay, who would be impacted by this? Who do I want to write for? And that is the group like 16 and older that I end up focusing on.
Certainly adults can read this easily. It's not it's not a childlike book. It's an adult book, but it's definitely appealing to a generation from about, like you say, middle teens and on up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm interested in the very beginning of the book. You print a content warnings. Now, I don't read a lot of books targeted for this group, so I don't typically see content warnings. So when I saw it, I went, this is very interesting. So I want to go through it a little bit. You put in there that there are mentions of sexual assault and rape, which is true. There's physical, verbal, and emotional abuse. There's mentions of suicide attempts, not seen on the page. Suicidal ideation, self-harm, also not seen on the page. Violence and death, religious abuse, and family member with dementia. Why did you feel it necessary to put that warning at the top of the book?
I felt it was important because even though it is aimed for a older audience, I guess, like older teenagers, I still think it's important to give those kids like a heads up. I don't want it to surprise anyone, and if they are going through something similar and are not in a place where they are okay with reading that content, I don't want to put them through that. So I thought it was appropriate for my younger audience.
Because the younger audiences, correct me if you think I'm wrong, younger audiences aren't quite mature enough to be prepared to handle it and know how to handle it. Is that why?
Not always. I'd say, yeah, they're not as experienced with healing from these things yet. Some of them might still be going through it at the time.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to surprise any of my audience with something that's going to trigger them or upset them. But especially for teenagers, I think it's important to be able to be like, hey, this has this stuff in it, heads up. I don't want to bring up anything too rough for you or influence them in a poor way.
So, in a way, probably, I'm going to guess that for some readers, that would entice them in.
Yes. Some of them, yes. I have had them pick up the book at vendor fairs and things like that and go, oh, actually, yeah, absolutely. I want this.
Have you received any feedback from anyone who said, thank you for putting that there because then I don't want to read it?
Yes, I did have a couple like that, and I was totally fine with it. It makes perfect sense. This is not for everyone. I write happy stories to an extent, but a lot of my content is dark or depressing or traumatic in some way. So it's not for everyone.
You're right. It's definitely one of the things I know you definitely, I know you learned it at school, but you also have been very good at using it. And that is the infusion of conflict into the stories. And conflict frequently is triggering for people just because that causes anxiety that there's that kind of conflict that's happening and people sometimes don't want to handle it. But that's the purpose of a story, is to have people get to a catharsis after they've gone through a conflict-filled episode. And that's what this is. Your dedication says, to the girls that crave justice in a world not built for them. Explain what you mean.
So I wrote that because This book is a little personal to me. So I did start writing this during the Me Too movement. That's what really brought it out for me, and I realized a lot of my own situation. And I think it's really important to feel seen and to, as an author, to have other people feel seen as well. So I really wanted to write this for them, for the young girls that have struggled with things like this, struggled with situations like Eve or Haley or Sage, and just don't know what to do or don't know how to handle their emotions. And some of them might end up very depressed. Some of them might end up furious. And so I really wrote this series as kind of like a love letter to them over the course of how to heal from that, or that you can heal from that.
That's very good. That's what there's a lot of that going on in here. And clearly from the very start of the book, Eve has already gone through a traumatic event. And so a lot of the book is overcoming what the emotions that she's dealt with in that, of trying to get past that trauma or live with the trauma in an easier way. So the book clearly has mature themes in it. You've got survival and revenge. That's part of the trauma we're talking about. It's the recovery from the trauma. And then it's self-identity. Who am I? And the other characters in the book are dealing with their own identities. When you write about such heavy topics and you have to spend a lot of time and energy thinking about such heavy topics, how does that affect you personally as you're dealing with it as a writer?
It's kind of my bread and butter. I thrive on writing the angsty, miserable, sad moments. I know, it's so weird.
Does it make you feel good that you're doing it? Do you feel
cathartic a little bit? Like
cathartic? It's an uplift of sorts, yeah?
Yeah, it feels good, especially because I know even though I write dark stories, I like there to be some kind of hope within them. And I know that's going to be there, or that is there somewhere in the story. So I feel really good when I write those darker, traumatic moments.
That's clear and evident in the work itself, that you want people to come away from it with a sense that you can get through this and that there is hope at the end of the road. It's not Chinatown, you're not, or The Godfather. It's not that at all. It's something much more uplifting. You say you've always been interested in the topics of mythology and mayhem and murder. This is something that's always been fascinating to you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Mythology I've always been super interested in, and it's during, I think, high school or college, in between there, I transitioned to pagan. So mythology is like right up my alley.
What do you mean you transitioned to pagan? What does that mean?
So I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
And
that's in the book too.
Yes.
Catholicism.
Yeah, Catholicism, the trauma of Catholicism. And I did grow up Catholic, but around middle school, I kind of phased out of that, and I didn't really have much to believe in or really search for. And so I just kind of researched a bunch of different mythologies, different religions, and paganism really stuck with me. So I like to include bits of that in my work as well.
I think that's clearly evident in this other world, the Fey world, that the paganism, it's not paganism per se, but it has that essence and feel of it.
Yeah, it's related, even if it's just like atmospherically.
Well, yeah, definitely. Tonally, it's quite evident. What appeals to you about these darker topics? What is it that draws you to it?
I mean, I've always been kind of a morbid kid. One of my favorite movies when I was a toddler was Scream. So I've always had a little bit of a morbid sense of humor. I really feel like there is usually some kind of hope at the end of a lot of horror, that there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And so I like when things get really dark, because then you can pull out of that. There is still somewhere to go after that.
Well, that is the essence of I think it's what makes horror so popular, is that most horror movies have a cathartic moment at the end that's very deeply built. So you've got the fear and the fear and the terror and the fear, and then suddenly there's a ray of light at the end and you can walk away with your protagonist intact, hopefully. Doesn't work in every story, but most of the, certainly the Hollywood ones, wind up with your protagonist intact. Why? So that they can have another sequel. I mean, that's what that's all about, and that's a money issue. But the truth is that catharsis, I contend, is the storytelling drug. It's what brings people back over and over again to want to reread books and rewatch movies, is that they've had a catharsis at the end of the movie. That's what you're talking about, correct?
Yes.
All right. So how did you come up with the concept of this world that we wind up in?
I really love the idea of like political intrigue. In different kinds of mythology and different kinds of fantasy stories. And so I kind of wanted to mess around with the different court systems and the different types of fae. I had a lot of fun writing the different types of fae. So I really wanted to just kind of delve into what I would have thought the fae were as a child, what would have scared me as a kid, but also fascinated me. And that's kind of where I came up with a lot of this, because I used to go like traipsing through the forest a lot as a kid. My friend, he had like a little forest and a creek in his backyard, and we would make up stuff like this all the time with like creepy fae and mysteries and all the kind of horror you can imagine. We would just have a blast with it. And so I kind of went back on that.
Did anything weird ever happen while you were out there?
Not really, not that I can think of. It might have been weird to our childhood minds, like coming across a broken doll or something. But it was really more of the what could happen that really drove us.
Yeah, that's the imagination running wild, especially as a kid. But it happens for adults too. I mean, if you now, as an adult, if you wound up in a forest and you ran into something like you describe in the book, it might give you pause.
Maybe a little bit. Maybe question it.
All right, so let's talk about Eve Carter. This is your protagonist. She is a high school senior. Did you pick that age, that year, because that was the audience you were appealing to, or why did you pick that age?
I didn't really pick it at first. It kind of just happened. I kept messing around. Originally, she was in college, and then at some point I had her out of college, and then at some point she was in middle school. It went all over the place. But I think I finally settled on her senior year because it is a huge transitionatory period. Like she's graduating, she is still trying to transition from her trauma, like try to find a way past that. She doesn't know what her future is, but everyone else is jumping into their futures around her. And I felt that was a really good place to put her. And it does work with the age group, which is awesome, but it wasn't my initial thought. I was trying to think of what worked best for her as a character.
So this is good for the audience, the listeners, to understand that you can develop a character down one whole road and realize at some point, no, this is not right. And then go back and fix and fix and fix. And that's what you went through with this. You had her as one age or another, but then you ultimately settled on 17.
Oh yeah, I rewrote this thing probably 15 times in different formats. It started as a screenplay for the first 5 times and then transitioned to prose. And she went through a lot of changes before she became the character she is now.
So talk about that transition from screenplay to prose. Was that a challenge for you, or did you find it relieving to do it, or how did it come about, and how did you feel about it?
So it was kind of a challenge at first because I'd gotten so used to cutting any kind of fluff from my writing. And now I was like, oh, I don't need fluff necessarily, but I need to bulk up my book. I need to have some kind of descriptor and more things happening than what I normally would in a screenplay. So that was definitely a little difficult to get used to. I think I managed to finally get used to that. But that was definitely a hard transition, jumping from screenplay to prose. But before that, when I was going just into screenplays, like it was a hard transition going from prose to screenplay. So it's kind of back and forth.
So that's very interesting because, as I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but the emphasis on when you're teaching screenwriting is on less is more, tight, only give enough description to get you from one moment to the next, but you don't need to fill in all the blanks. That's something that the actors and the director and the production designers and so on do. You don't need to describe everything. You need enough for them to get what they're doing. But as the author of a novel, you have to fill in most of those blanks and still leave enough room for the reader to have an imagination about it, right?
Exactly. And it's still very much, you want to keep things tight, tight, tight. You just have a little bit more freedom and you get a little bit more control over it. Like what you're writing has to have some kind of meaning or tell some kind of story in its own.
Do you enjoy that process though?
Oh my God, yes. I love it. The first draft is always kind of rough for me. That's probably my worst one. But when I get to revising, like, oh, I'm all for it.
Well, that's that. We talked about puke drafts in school that you just, are you do you like to do that right fast and get it out and then revise?
Yeah. So my process right now is I will write my first draft and just try to get it out, beat myself up over it for a couple weeks and then push out the last like 40,000 words in 2 weeks. And then I'll send it to my editor for developmental edits. And once she brings it back, like I love seeing the red pen. That is my favorite thing in the world.
Oh, that's interesting. Why?
Because she notices so many things that I would have never picked up on. Some of them I have picked up on, and I'm really glad to, have that confirmed. Like, oh yeah, this doesn't work or this is wrong. But it is so helpful to have another set of eyes on my story and to see how much better it can be and to push it to that next level.
So you love a good editor then?
Oh my God, yeah. Editors can make or break any story.
And that means that you are giving up a certain amount of your ego by doing that.
Yeah, it's very difficult, I think, for younger writers to give up that creative freedom and to kill their darlings.
I honestly think other than certain writers who get so good at it that they don't need editing anymore, I think every writer needs an editor.
Oh yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Like I will praise my editor, Maddie, till the end of my days.
Well, and that's really good to know. I think that that's the right attitude, is that part of it is that you probably, like I do, you get a little bit lost in the forest for the trees.
Oh, 100%.
No pun intended with your book.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Eve for a moment. She's got more than a few troubles. I assume that you either have known people with those troubles, and I'm not asking for any, I'm not trying to pry into your personal life, but you either know people who have had troubles like that, or you've read about people with troubles like that, or you've experienced them yourself. Usually it's one of those three. When we meet her, she believes she's going to hell. That's right at the top. She thinks she's going to hell, correct?
Yes.
And then she's been moved across her desires, her wishes. She's being moved across the state of Vermont to another place. She's dealing with a mentally failing grandmother. This is all sort of in the beginning of the book. And she's got an abusive father. All these things are happening to her. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, before we even get into the essence of the story. Would this story work at all if Eve's life wasn't so difficult and filled with conflict?
No, I don't think it would. She does not have the kind of support system to easily heal from her trauma. Having this constant bombardment of conflict in the form of having to figure out her own support system, having to find her own group of people that are willing to help her and get her out of that, versus having that established already, I think she'd be a completely different character.
So I want to compliment you on something you do extraordinarily well that I think most young writers don't do so well. You very slowly build the story. We don't get jumped into the middle of the where it's going too fast. It takes a while for it to build, but you do it in a way where it's not the least bit dull or uninteresting. And to me, you bring in these two girls, Haley and Sage, and for a very long time in the book, we don't know that this is going into an otherworldly scenario, even though there are clues. But we're not there. You do that slow. And I think that that's really great. That's great storytelling. Was it your intention all along to build that slowly till we get into the heart of where it is going to go?
I thought that with Eve's story, she deals with so much. I didn't want to immediately jump into the fantasy aspects and just throw everything at my readers at once. I think that the slowness is also part of her depression. It's the very slow movement through her life where there's a ton of things happening, but she's not always very present for them until we get to the Fae world and she starts making her big decisions.
But it unfolds very deliberately for a long time. There's where like I say, we get clues with Liam about this is something going on, but we don't know what it is. It's not in your face. It's just something odd's going on. And, I think as you probably also learned in school, that all stories are stories of suspense. And that's what you're building here is a suspenseful story. And so we don't know where it's going. Did you know as you were writing this, did you know exactly how it was going? Did you build out an outline before you started to write?
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah. I will say I spend the most time of my writing process on outlines. I will sit there and write it. I'll maybe get like 10 or 20,000 words of the first draft done, and I will see where it stands with the outline, if the outline still works. If not, I sit back and I redo it. I adjust it how I need to. But I really like having a tight outline before I begin my work. Because, I will probably toss some things away here and there and move things around as I need to. But the outline is so important to me.
Tell the listeners about how many pages 20,000 words works out to be.
Oh, gosh, I usually have my calculator do it. That's what, like 100 something pages?
It's going to be somewhere between 60 and 100 pages, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere in the higher, yeah.
And how often when you get to the end of having developed that outline, do you look back and go, no, I've got to go back to the beginning and fix?
Yep, every time, almost every time. Sometimes it's smaller things, which I'm lucky for. I know my second book, the sequel to Sin and Bones, I only had to revise it 2 times, which was awesome. And only
the outline or the book?
The outline.
The outline.
Yeah. The book now. The book is its own beast there, but the outline I only had to revise 2 times before I was happy with it. But the first book, Sin and Bones, that was a monster. And my current outline that I'm working on for my book in September, I am still currently messing with the outline as I write the story.
As you're writing, once you start to write, whether it's the script or the text of your novel or whatever it is, you're going to continue to make corrections along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Your characters unfold before your eyes and make their own decisions. And then you're like, well, I can't have them do X, Y, Z because that's not who their character is anymore.
How much do you feel like the storytelling is coming through you, like you're a conduit for it, versus you're doing it?
I'd say fairly often. It's really when I get into a zone. Like at first, usually at the beginning of my writing process for the day, I'm like, oh yeah, it's just me throwing down words again, trying to get this out of the way. But once I get in the groove of things, I'm like, oh yeah, the words are just coming. They're just flowing out of here.
And you're sort of just in the middle of it. You're not really thinking all the way through. It's just happening.
Yeah, that's the zone. And it gets so much easier once characters are better established and everything, because you already know them.
Do you start to hear them talking in your head?
Oh my gosh, yeah, no. I have like fan cast voices in my head for everyone.
Does it ever freak you out that you're hearing voices in your head? No, that doesn't me either.
I've been talking to myself for years.
Well, that's what a writer is. Certainly a novelist is someone who's talking to themselves, but it's coming out on paper or in a computer, however you're doing it. That's when that happens, that's like my favorite part of all of it when you get into that zone.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. It is the best feeling in the world to just be able to pump out like 15,000 words in 2 days. Like, that's amazing.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about Liam. I mentioned him a moment ago. Who is he and what's he all about?
So Liam is he is a fae that is kind of Eve's love interest, but that they're more of a love story. The romance isn't the point of the book, but he is her, I would say, quote, love interest, and also becomes one of her best friends. He kind of helps snap her out of a lot of her darker moments.
There's a lot of tension between them, which gives it that the feeling of a sexual relationship, even though there is none.
Yes, no, they have a kind of fun, snarky, bantery kind of behavior, but he is definitely, at least at the beginning of the book, he's definitely a little self-centered, a little bit of a smart ass, and kind of has to learn how to manage that behavior in the presence of someone who is so deeply wounded that his behavior is not funny to her, it's hurtful, and he kind of has to reconcile with that and realizing, like, grow from that.
Because he's a little cavalier about it all.
Oh yeah, no, he does not understand anything that's going on.
And Eve is not really cavalier about much at all. That's a conflict right there.
Yeah, she's very private, and she is also a little aggressive.
So your magical world, the Fey world, sort of comes off a little bit like it's a kingdom, which it is a kind of a kingdom. And is there a parallel to any real world stuff that you looked at, and there's a parallel to it?
I'm sure there's a lot that is parallel that I didn't think of when I was writing it. I focused much more on the characters' traumas and giving them all distinct things to heal from. That I tried to research very well. The kingdom thing, I mean, I read a lot of fantasy and I like to watch history documentaries. So I'm sure some of that has snuck in here.
Are you a Game of Thrones fan?
I did love Game of Thrones. Yes. I have opinions about the last season, but I won't get into that right now.
Well, the Game of Thrones is very different from what you wrote, but there are elements of it in terms of the hierarchy.
Yes, absolutely.
How much of the story did you intend, if not all of it, to be allegorical about the universal issues of growing up?
So when I first wrote it, I didn't intend for that. But once I got through my later revisions, I started to understand my themes. My themes don't usually come till after I'm working on the book for a while. So once that came in, I was like, oh, I can kind of mess with this. So it became intentional.
I love that you say that the themes come after you've been working on it, if not a full first draft, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I think we talked about in school is that,
oh, yeah.
Don't worry about your themes to start, because sometimes that forces you into weird dead end alleys. And so if you just write the story and then go back and look at, well, what themes am I talking about here? Then you can go back and make sure that that's represented all the way through.
Yeah, that is why I love the revising process, like right after I get my developmental edits, because at that point I see everything my editor has seen. I've had some time away from the script to look at it and start picking out the themes and be like, oh, here's how I can emphasize that. Here's how I can make it better than what it was.
What do you think you did? Eventually, Eve becomes self-empowered. For a long time in the book, she's sort of the victim, and then she becomes self-empowered. How challenging was it for you to clearly express that shift and to get us to a sense of that empowerment?
That was probably one of my biggest rewrites. It was very difficult to figure out how to manage that within her character. At points, I knew she was being too passive, but I needed her to be at least a little passive at the beginning of the book because of everything going on around her. Getting her to that point where she is self-empowered and she is going to do something about it. I rewrote the ending of the first book like 100 times before I settled on, oh, I think this is the situation to put her in.
It took you that long to understand that particular turn.
Yeah, sometimes it takes a long time. And this was definitely one of them.
Absolutely. You're lucky if you get it right off the top. You're lucky.
Oh, yeah.
But most of the time, it's just grunt work to try and figure out, why isn't this working? And then you have to go back and work and work and work, which is what you've done. You're very diligent about it, obviously. Did you do anything as you were developing all these characters to avoid stereotypes?
I didn't consciously try to do that. I did go through during edits and revisions to be like, okay, let's double check everything. And, I had been doing my research as I was writing the first draft, before I wrote the first draft, and then again during edits. It wasn't something that was immediately on my mind until the editing process, where I was like, okay, I want to look at this really hard and just make sure that, I'm not hitting anything too stereotypical or upsetting, I guess, in that regard.
Well, but again, you had to sort of create characters for a little bit before you said, oh, wait a minute, I'm sure you did this, where you went, that's just like some other character I've seen or read. And now I've got to figure out how to make that character not stereotypical.
No, it was, I would say Haley was probably the hardest one in regards to that, because I originally had written her as kind of a happy-go-lucky comic relief. And as I was reading the story, it felt very out of place. She didn't feel human. She felt very one note. So during a lot of my revisions, I tried to flesh out her character more. And I wanted to flesh out her hobbies, her family, her interests, things like that, that really helped build her character into an actual person.
And those are the kinds of things that a screenwriter needs to do, but frequently that information will not come out in the screenplay. It will just come out in the sort of in the feeling of what's going on with the character, not in detail. But in a novel, you can actually express all that, right?
Yep, that is my job.
and that's fun for you.
Oh my God, yeah. I love it. I love making my own little weird little worlds.
Well, and good on you, because that's what's going to separate you from the rest of the pack is your weird little worlds. I've not had the privilege of reading Blood and Stone yet, but what's that about?
At that point, Eve is trapped in the Fey world with Haley, and Liam and Sage already live there, but she is trapped and forced into a kind of competition for who is going to be the heir of the Bone Court. And while she's there, she is also trapped with the men who raped her. It's a very, I don't want to say it's a messy book, because the book itself is not messy, but it's a messy situation that she's in, where at this point she has tried to kill Liam, but now she has to partner with him to try to survive in this dark Fey world. She has established a wonderful friendship with Haley and Sage, but now there is a betrayal. She is now trapped with the men she was hoping to be rid of forever, and has to actually go forth and take care of that on her own terms as well.
So you described that well, that she's got a messy life and world, but the storytelling is not.
Yeah, she has a bunch of mess. She is going through it in book 2. But the story itself, I'd like to think it's pretty easy to read.
And is We Are Buried in the Garden, is that book 3 or is that another book entirely?
That's a separate book. So book 3 is coming out next March.
Do you have a title for it yet?
I do, and I can tell you now because I haven't, by the time this is posted, it should be out. It's Heir and Throne.
Heir and Throne.
Mm-hmm.
That's H-E-I-R, not A-I-R.
Yeah, H-E-I-R and Throne.
Is that the conclusion of the story, or will there be more?
No, that'll be the final book of the trilogy, unless someone commissions me like $8 billion and is like, write more. And I'm like, sure.
Oh, every author is going to get a check for $8 billion.
I know, right? That's just standard these days.
So tell us about We Are Buried in the Garden. What's that about then?
Yeah, so We Are Buried in the Garden is my first standalone adult novel. It is a Gothic fantasy about a young woman named Marceline who has just lost her sister. Her sister has passed away, unfortunately, and she is marrying into a renowned doctor's family to try to bring her sister back to life. However, once she arrives there, she soon realizes that the way to bring her sister back to life is not nearly so easy as she had hoped, and perhaps not quite as moral as she had hoped.
So when you say bring her back to life, is she buried already? She's already in the ground?
So her body's buried, but her spirit is still there. So she is haunted by her younger sister throughout the book. And you get her point of view and her sister's point of view throughout the story, as her sister is slowly facing the threat of her spirit being corrupted for not resting for so long. And so they're on like a whole time limit thing to get her sister brought back to life before she turns into a monster.
It's the infamous ticking clock.
Yes, I love my ticking clocks.
Well, that's what makes a lot of the tension and conflict work, is that, somebody's on a deadline of some kind. not every story in the world has those, but when they do, it usually ups the ante quite quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's fun. Now, when she's brought back to life, or when she tries to be brought back to life, this is not Frankenstein-like, is it?
No. So it's not. It's a little bit based on the Frankenstein idea of like playing God, bringing a man back to life sort of situation. But it is much more of she is grieving and desperate to bring her sister back, and she uncovers someone that was brought back and how that happened.
And then uses that to go at it.
Kind of. She has to make a moral decision from that point, whether it is still worth to bring her sister back or not.
And that moral question will have certain religious overtones to it at the same time, I assume.
Oh, it always does.
It always does. Because, we're not really built as humans to live forever. I mean, we're just not built that way. And so we have a lifespan of some length, whatever that length is. And hopefully we make the best of it as we're in it. And that's part of the morality of what you're discussing, I have to guess.
Yes, absolutely.
So, all right, do you maintain a daily writing routine?
I do write every day. I do not always write the same amount of words every day.
Well, that's okay.
So some days I'll get like 100 words done. Some days I sit there for 10 hours and I get 10,000 words done. So it really just depends. But I do try to write something every day, even if it's not this manuscript. Like I'll work on an outline, or I will write like a short story, or just fumble with something.
You feel like you're maybe a little stuck. Is there something you do to jog you out of it?
I force myself. I sit there and I force myself to write something. I might switch chapters. I might switch POVs. If it's really, really not working, I'll go back and reread the story for what I have and see, okay, what naturally comes next. And we can fix that in post.
There's no substitute for just sitting there and working, which is what you do. So when you're in that chair and you are working away, what is it that you do for further inspiration? Or are you just looking to get in that zone?
I mean, I'm really aiming to get in that zone, but that's not always going to come. So sometimes I have to put on some background music that kind of like gets a moody atmosphere. Or I have a folder of inspiration pictures I picked out during the outlining phase that I'll pull up and kind of flip through. But I try not to look anything up when I'm writing or when I'm stuck, because it's just going to distract me.
Are you easily distracted?
I am, unfortunately. The internet is a very distracting thing. So my best option is to pull up things I already have saved, or to go for a walk, or I also read a lot, and I've been expanding a lot of the books that I read, so I can kind of pick inspiration from other genres and stories.
Do you try to read things that are not related genre-wise to what you're writing entirely?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I think that that's probably one of the best things I can do for inspiration, is reading anything, really. Like, I might not be super interested in a specific time period in history or something, but I can pull out things that happened during that time that I'm like, oh, this would work really well for this. Usually it just kind of pops in my head and I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I can use this later, and I put it in my idea file.
Who's your favorite writer right now? Who do you read?
Oh my gosh, right now, I mean, I love Brandon Sanderson. He is like top tier. I actually vended at Dragonsteel Nexus, his convention, last December, and I loved it. But I am also a huge fan of Matt Dinniman. He has written the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which I am obsessed with. Holly Black is a huge inspiration. I've been reading her books for so long. She's written about Fae since I was a teenager. Yeah, I'd say those are probably my big three right now, my top three.
Do you try to read something every day?
Yes, absolutely. I'm actually currently on The Gate of the Feral Gods, which is book 4 of Dungeon Crawler Carl. So I'm reading that, and then I have a couple book club books to get to, and then I'll jump back in the rest of his books.
Do you ever find, like, while you're writing what you write, that you need to put that aside, the other kind of stories that have even a similar tone to yours?
Sometimes, not all the time. Actually, more often I find that I do the opposite, where if I really want to get in the zone for a story, I will try to surround myself with that kind of vibe. So leading up to this, when I was working on the outline, I read a ton of Gothic novels for my book in September, like Frankenstein, Dracula, a couple newer authors, like Don't Let the Forest In, things like that. And that really helped cement the kind of creepy vibe I was going for.
Do you ever read H.G. Wells?
Yes, I actually have a big Barnes and Noble collection of H.G. Wells. I think 7 novels. I got it back in high school, and I read the first, I think 3 or 4 novels of it, and it's been sitting on my shelf, meaning for me to pick up and read the rest of them.
I think that you'd find him interesting for what you do. He is absolutely unrelated to the world that you're in, but I think that you'd find the way that he writes, the way he tells stories, to be very intriguing to you. I could be wrong about that. You'd have to tell me.
You're right. I mean, I've read, let's see, The Invisible Man is probably one of his most famous that I love.
War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds. I haven't gotten to that one yet. The Time Traveler.
It's a time machine, I believe.
Time Machine. Thank you. It's been a while since I read it.
Like I say, there are a lot of great ones out there, and among them would be Mary Shelley and certainly Stoker and so on. Yeah, absolutely. So I've been having just an absolutely wonderful conversation with Paige Regan for a little bit of time here, and we're going to wind the show down. And I'm wondering, Paige, in all of your experiences now as a writer, can you share with us a story that's either weird, quirky, offbeat, strange, or just plain funny?
Yeah, so actually, what really got me into writing professionally was I decided to do freelance writing for video games. That's how I started before I became an author. And my first couple of clients, all they wanted were corruption games for how to write like characters becoming corrupted. And I took that a little bit more as, oh, like murder. That's not quite what they were going for. I realized very quickly.
So corrupted as in like politically corrupted?
They were going for sexually corrupted. But,
sexually corrupted.
Yes, and I went much more of like, oh, you want like murder and the mafia.
What video games? What do we know any of the names?
They are a bunch of indie studios. One of them was for Hezor Games. They have a game called Uni. I did manage to convince them to let me write like a murderous route. So I'm quite proud of myself for that one.
Do you enjoy writing video games?
It's so much fun. I'm a huge gamer, so it's pretty natural for me to jump into that.
So that's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah. It's not like my main career kind of thing. That's definitely more of hobby at this point. I just find it fun to do.
I've never written a video game, and I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'd have to go learn all about it. So I find that interesting. That's a much more expansive world than writing a novel, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, it is. The amount of words I write for video games, I could be writing like Wheel of Time for one game.
All right. So last question for you today, Paige. You've given us a tremendous amount of advice throughout this whole show, but I'm wondering, do you have a single piece of advice or a tip that when somebody says to you, how do you do this, or how do I get into this, that you like to give to them?
Other than writing, just constantly do it, get through the book. I really like to say, just support your fellow artists and your fellow writers and be supportive of your team. Thank your editor, show your appreciation. Like, they are working so hard, and it may not be the same position as you have. It may not be the same thing as writing, but having others who understand your love for writing or books or anything, it's so important. Writers are so inherently lonely. So it's great to make friends that can relate to you in those plights.
It is important to have a support system of some kind, that the people that you deal with and you're around aren't telling you stop doing that, it's a waste of time or something like that, that you need that support.
Absolutely. And just helping support other artists too, even if they're in a different part of their career than you. Like, support their successes, be happy for them. Like, we're all here for each other. We're all struggling. I think it's so important to just show kindness.
Well, that's just a terrific bit of advice, to show kindness, not just in the writing business, but in general. And I think that that's really terrific advice. Paige, Regan, this has been so much fun for me to finally get a chance to have one of my former students on the show. This has really been cool for me. And for any of you that are, I'm so glad that you were here today. And for those of you interested, check out Paige's work on either Sin and Bones, Blood and Stone. What's the third one called now?
It's going to be Heir and Throne. It'll be March 2027.
Cool. And also check out We Are Buried in the Garden. Paige, Regan, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your energy and your wisdom, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Steve. It's been so wonderful. I'm so glad you invited me.
And so we've come to the end of today's Story Beat. If you like this episode, won't you please take a moment to give us a comment, rating, or review on whatever app or platform you're listening to. Your support helps us bring more great StoryBeat episodes to you. StoryBeat is available on all major podcast apps and platforms, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and many others. Until next time, I'm Steve Cuden, and may all your stories be unforgettable.